How's everybody doing? All right. Just coming off of Passover and the week of unleavened, had me doing a lot of self-reflecting, taking a look at myself, seeing how I can move forward in my life without sin. And it also brought on a very dangerous question to myself. Who am I? Who am I to deserve any of this? To answer that question, who I am a sinner. It took me no time to realize that. If you would turn, I'm going to probably only take one verse today. If you would just turn, everybody knows it, but Exodus 20, verse 3. It says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." I'm a sinner because I worship a false god. Time and time again, more often than I like to admit, I have worshipped a false god. Anytime I am presented with a trial, a temptation, a situation in my life that brings stress, I tend to make God smaller than he actually is, not because of God. God can do anything, but who am I to deserve his help? Who am I? Through all that, every time I belittle him, I make him just as wavering, unfaithful, uncaring, backstabbing, unforgiving, unreliable, and unloving as myself. And basically, I turn God into me. And I am no God. Who am I? I am a sinner and undeserving, and that is not my God. There's a song by Casting Crowns called "Who Am I?" And the second verse hits me really hard. And it goes, "Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that calmed the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling. And you've told me who I am. I am yours." When you look at it from that viewpoint, and you have that realization that who you are is his, it no longer becomes a question of who am I, but whose am I? And once you have that realization, you can look back at Exodus 20, and I'm going to start in verse 2. And it says, "I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, and out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I am the Lord thy God. I am your God, and you are mine. I am the one who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I am the one who freed you from sin and from the world through my Son Jesus Christ, through his bloodshed." When that becomes your realization, who you are doesn't matter anymore because you are his. It makes me think, now I'm going to start hitting other verses. Abraham in Genesis 22, when he was tempted by God to sacrifice his son Isaac, Abraham did not let who he was interfere with who God is and who he was to God, which was his. He never once doubted that God would provide. Twice in chapter 22, once Isaac asks Abraham, "Where's our sacrifice? What are we going to do?" Abraham's only response is, "God will see to it." And that was his belief. And then again, after God had provided with a ram for the sacrifice, Abraham built an altar and named it Jehovah Jireh, I believe. Might be pronouncing that a little off, but it just means that God will see to it. And then in Hebrews 11, I can't remember the exact verse there, But in Hebrews 11, it talks of Abraham's faith and that how Abraham knew that even if he sacrificed Isaac, he knew that God would bring him back from the dead because there was a promise through Isaac's seed that there would be many nations. Abraham never once let himself, who he was, just a simple human being, interfere with who God was. He let God be God and never once doubted that. In John 3, verse 30, John the Baptist says, "He must increase, but I must decrease." And that is how we should approach every situation in life. With not the thought of who I am, but whose am I? And the thought of it's not what can I do in order to get through this situation. Whether you're thinking, what can I do with God to get through this situation? You can do nothing. Only God can do. So if you approach the situation of, what can my God do for me in this situation? All of a sudden, all this stress and doubt and self-worth that is low of yourself disappears. So it's, who am I? I'm his. We are his. We are deserving and we are loved, not because of anything we have done, but because of who he is. And he is God, and he is our God. And that's all I have.